As we wrap up the show for today, we're talking about the latest developments with regards the state's indebtedness. Now, there was a National Economic Council meeting yesterday, and it was announced that the federal government has issued bonds for 11 states to about 14 banks. The start of a process of trying to write off their debts, as the case were, to turn those debts into bond issues. And so we're talking the bonds, the state indebtedness, the state of the state's economy, and Bosun, as I said, is back in the studio with me. Bosun.
Thank you, Harriet. Just try to ease off things a little bit.
It's really, yes, I see you've
really
gone
hot.
And taken off your jacket.
I almost took off my tie. But, you know, for compliance purposes, I just have to keep it up.
Bosun, it is a Friday. I totally agree with you. But then we've got to talk the numbers. And you just came in and you talked about the fact that this week alone, we've seen about $2 trillion wiped off the markets.
Global stock markets declining very rapidly. $2 trillion is the number that Bloomberg just had on their screen right now, and that is quite significant. Commodity prices, gold's down, currencies are down. The currency wars is expanding, not just between Beijing and Washington, Harriet. It now include African currencies. We need to get on in this business. South African rand just touched a 13 rand to $1. And that's the story early today as well. The currency in Nigeria is also facing it. So the big African countries are join the currency war now, because when China sneezes, the rest of the world catches cold. So the things are really looking pretty bad out there. And that's I just had to take off my jacket.
Okay, so now let's bring it back. We're seeing the currency, the way it is, and we're seeing the economy, global economy also, a little fluctuating kind of. And then we're talking about this bond restructuring.
For state governments, this was mentioned a few weeks ago that it will happen. Now it's been announced that it has happened behind closed doors, and we're just being briefed. Personally, I don't think I'm too comfortable with this kind of briefing from the National Executive. Yes, that's the curtain raiser. I would want the central bank or the DMO to do a proper briefing as to what state governments, what was packaged as bank loans, repackaged into FGN bonds. They need to brief us, and that has to happen as early as Monday. And I'm putting my career here. Say, look, when these state governments went to take those bank loans, they were private discussions. So perhaps we had no right to know. Because, yeah, so it's called a customer-client relationship. Now,
you don't have to know.
We don't have to know. However, FGN bonds is not a private business. It's not a commercial loan. Therefore, thank you very much, the guys at the Economic Council at the Villa, for telling us this has happened. But we need the full details. The newspapers and the media weren't reporting the name of the state governments that have gotten this conversion of bank loans into FGN bonds. So first, we need to know what is the size of the bank loans that each of these 11 states have been restructured. Now, the DMO is the one who should do this briefing as quickly as possible. Number two, we need to know the size. Number two, we need to know the tenor. We need to know what is the coupon, or whatever it is, the arrangements for this bond. Now, are these bonds going to be listed on the stock exchange and perhaps the FMDQ and be part of the FGN bond, Federal Government of Nigeria, of which is different? Now, is AMCON going to be involved in this transaction? We don't have that clarity right now. So we need to have that clarity. If it is just a DMO and the commercial banks, and of course the central bank will also be privy to that, because the central bank is the midwife for all the commercial banks. So the central bank would know. But basically, these are the four guys who will sit in the room: the banks, the state governments, the DMO, and the central bank. Those are the four parties to the issue. Now, whether AMCON will be part of it or has been part of it is what we do not know. So we need to know. So we need to know the tenor of these bonds. We need to know the structure. We need to know what the market will expect. Will these bonds be tradable? And like every other FGN bonds that you and I talked about here on a daily basis and reporting in the media, we need to have those details very clearly out there. It's not a political statement. This is not a political move. Well, it's a political move on the part of the president, who's magnanimous to say, look, I'm the CEO of this enterprise called Nigeria. I need to make sure that we don't get into a fiscal cliff. A commercial loans cliff as far as some state government is concerned. So let me do the better. So the president has done the needful as both the economic and political head of the country. But in terms of the details, the market needs to be briefed by the authority, which is the DMO and the central bank, on the first part. On the second part, the state government, those 11 state governments, should brief their House of Assembly and brief the citizens of each of those states. And perhaps I think they should take a public statement, because now that you've restructured commercial loans for the state from the banks into FGN bonds, you owe the public, the citizens of each of those 11 state governments, you owe them the right to know that this bond has been restructured. So it is either they publish in the newspaper advertorial stating the fifth facts and figures,
should be on the website.
Or they should be on the website of each state government that we have restructured 80 billion naira, for example, 30 billion naira commercial loan with ABC Bank, BZD Bank, Boston and So Bank into FGN bond, maturing year, this. Okay, this is how it will go. Thank you, guys, because these funds were borrowed by these state governments on behalf of the people and for the people of those state governments. So they can just do this behind closed doors and we just move on as if nothing has happened. The DMO owes the Nigerian investors, they owe the local and international investors that to report. Then the state government should also brief their respective state people, either on their state radio or television, but more important, better still, the newspaper where the rest of us can see it.
Remember, this, there are 22 states that actually were supposed to have this, restructuring, if you'd like to put it that way. Yeah, so now we have 11. We've got 11 pending. So going forward, and based on the suggestions you've just made, maybe that's the same tack they should take for this next 11 who are yet to reconcile and bring in their own accounts or
their books to the
table.
Their
books, rather. Their books to the table.
I'm sure if you, perhaps why these first 11 looks like two football clubs, 11 here. They got a referee in the middle. That's the DMO. Okay, so looks like these 11 were the ones, perhaps their cases or their relationship with the bank seem a little bit easy to sort out. The rest, perhaps the central bank and the banks are still unwinding the books. Now, don't forget that these state loans, perhaps the incumbent or the sitting state governors in some of these states aren't the ones who borrowed these bank loans. Harriet, let's keep that at the back of our mind. Perhaps they were borrowed by the immediate past, the 2 governors ago, 3 governors ago. So they need to go back to the books in their accounts and say, at what rate were these bank loans sourced, this and that. All those will have to be on footer, because in some cases, some of the state governors are the ones just inheriting this transaction. Therefore, we need to cut them a bit of a slack here for them to know that, look, this was not their loans. They didn't take these loans from those commercial banks. They are just inheriting this process because of a change in administration, the state of the economy, and the state of those states governments as well. I think those are some of the issues that perhaps will be pending for the remaining 11. But I think the remaining 11 should be sorted out before the end of the year. Well, that's an issue that we're going to keep our eye on as well, Bosimbo. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm waiting for the briefing. Thank you. It's Friday. It's a Friday, and thank you so much for spending your Friday with us, your Friday morning with us, that is. The rest of the day continues. So I'm wishing you a profitable trading day and, of course, for you to enjoy your weekend. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Bye-bye.